All right, well, welcome to our last Facebook Live session on Money Matters FAFSA 101. So we are happy to have everybody join us tonight. And we have in our circle of friends this evening, we have the lovely Dee Dee and the lovely Chris. So if you guys would just introduce yourselves again.
My name is Chris Ratliff. I'm the Assistant Director for Federal Processing here at the University of North Carolina, Greensboro. I handle all of the FAFSA and verification data of that FAFSA. So it's good to see everybody again.
And I'm Dee Dee Carter. I'm the Senior Financial Aid Counselor here at UNCG. I work with students and families as they are kind of navigating this financial aid process, making sure all their ducks in a row. So good to be back with y'all.
And once again, I'm Deborah Slade. I'm the Assistant Director for Outreach, and I manage our presentation calendar and scheduling, and just kind of take care of all of those things forward facing. So I know it's been a long day, guys, but we're just glad we're here. We started a tad early tonight because we wanted to cover a recap of all of the sessions that we've gone over very briefly. We're not going to have time to go through each and every one of the topics, but we did want to give people just an idea of what the other sessions were about. All of those videos are on our Facebook page, so that if you want to go through, you can see what was featured. And that way, if you watch our recap tonight, then you can kind of see which video you want to take in that may have the answer to some of the questions that you may have. We also encourage you to put your questions in the comment section. Our lovely Jade Andrews, everybody's lovely tonight. Our lovely Jade Andrews is there monitoring and will make sure we get your questions, and we'll be also funneling information to you as needed. So what we're going to do is go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see these slides as we go through, just again to give you kind of a overview and an update so that you can kind of figure out, well, what have they been talking about for the past 4 weeks? Well, we've been talking about all things FAFSA 101. So tonight we're going to go back through, as I said, just briefly, and talk about what's next after our brief recap. So
yeah, if you want to know a little bit more detail, the videos will boil those down a little bit detail. Tonight probably be more of a discussion of, hey, be aware of these things, and if you have additional questions, you can definitely drop those in the chat box there, and then we'll try to answer them on air. And if you have any questions after this, you can always leave us a message. There's some contact information at the last slide.
Yep. Okay, so first session, our session one was an overview and checklist. Again, just kind of going over what is the FAFSA, what you needed to do in order to get ready to file it. Chris, if you wanted to just briefly tell people what they need to have.
Sure, the FAFSA is ready to go right now. I would hope that you have already at least started a FAFSA or thought about it. It became available on October 1st, and different schools have priority deadlines or suggested deadlines. So I would always suggest you get it done as soon as possible, because the FAFSA is set up in a way to where you should have all of this information to complete it right now, or it would take you a day or two to gather it. And here is a list you can see here of things that you can get together before you complete the FAFSA to make it go a lot faster and smoother. As you can see highlighted there, it's 2019. So if you're doing the FAFSA for next fall and spring, let's say you're a senior in high school now, you'll be using 2019 tax data, and that would have been filed last year. The reason for that is if we had to use current data, for example, 2020, or for when you actually attend school, 2021, you wouldn't have that data right now. You wouldn't have filed those taxes yet, as 2020 is not completed. So they're using this as helpful to be able to file now and use the data now. So 2019, remember that.
And one of the things I would add definitely in there is, what you need is to really hammer in the point about the FSA ID. That is your login information. It is yours throughout the time that you are a student, if you decide to borrow federal loans. So, we talked about this before, and I'm sure we'll mention it again, but making sure that parents, you have your own separate FSA ID, and students, you have your own separate FSA ID. And then definitely making sure, I think a big help is to do the second factor authentication, where it's like, hey, let's verify this with your email address or by text. Because if you forget that, it is so much easier to, with a lot of things, to send a text message and, follow the link to reset your password, or they can send it to your email address to reset your password. And that just really speeds up the process if you need to, if you've forgotten it because you use it once a year, to reset your password and then to immediately go in and do the things that you need to do with both your FAFSA and then again with your federal loans if you choose to take those out.
Yeah.
Great point.
Yeah, it's a good recap. So remember session 1, which was held on October 1st. Now that was a pre-recorded video, so that's a shorter video. Session 2, we talked about dependent or independent, who is my parent on the FAFSA. So yeah, so Chris, if you want to just kind of walk them through just briefly.
We have found in the millions of FAFSAs that we've seen over the years, we find that one of the biggest stumbling blocks for students and parents is this determination of whether I'm dependent or independent. Now that has a different definition than you as a person being an independent person or dependent person. It's a FAFSA definition of dependent or independent. Dependent students have to use parent information on the FAFSA. An independent student does not have to use parent information on the FAFSA. And what determines that is these set of 10 questions right here. Whether you can answer yes to any of these questions makes you independent. Now we know that not all students fit in a box completely, or there may be some maybes, not a yes or a no on there. And we'll address that in a little bit as far as some special circumstances. But here's how FAFSA defines whether you're dependent, have to use parent information, or independent, don't have to use parent information.
Okay. And, oh, sorry. And then, of course, we always want to make sure that students know who their parents are. Of course, they know who their parents are, but as far as the FAFSA definition of who is my parent and who goes on the FAFSA. So Chris, again, if you would just kind of give us the FAFSA definition of parent and who is not a parent.
Yeah, and one way to think about this is you don't get to just determine who your parent is on the FAFSA, just like you don't get to determine if you're independent or dependent. There's a set of questions that the FAFSA is going to ask you that's going to lead you down that path. And finding the correct parent to be on your FAFSA is one of those steps. And you can see this flow chart here. And I recommend if you do go back and watch this later on, you can pause this here and read all the steps through here. I'll just kind of go over some of the common situations is that, do I use mom or dad? Well, my mom and dad are divorced. They live separate. So which one do I use? Well, then it asks some questions about who did you live with more in the past 12 months? And if you have a yes or no to that, is who offered more support or gave you more support in those past 12 months? So as you can see, it's trying to lead you down a path to which is the correct parent to use for that. Also, what we find is a lot of students forget to use their step parent information on the FAFSA as well. As you can see, the FAFSA just asks, are your parents married to each other? And you can say yes or no there. But what they're talking about is once you determine that it's your mom, it should be on the FAFSA. Is your mom married? Yes or no? Yes, she's married to my stepdad. But then you would use your mom and stepdad's information on the FAFSA. It's not singling out just your biological parents on the FAFSA. It's asking for the parent that should be on the FAFSA, their marital status. And that trips people up too, because a lot of times they'll say, I'm sure Dee Dee's heard this before, that my step parent doesn't support me or doesn't pay anything for me. I'm not their child. Why should I be putting their information on the FAFSA? All of those statements are true, but understand that the FAFSA's rules are stating that you must. They're just trying to get account of the household and household information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I would definitely add in there about, as you're thinking about the parent who's your parent that should be on the FAFSA, it really comes down to the parent that you do live with. A lot of times students or families will trade off in terms of who claims who for this year, or even if your parents live in Wyoming and that's just where they happen to live, but you wanted to stay here and continue to go to school. So you're living with an aunt or a grandparent, and that person claims you. FAFSA still is not asking for that particular question. They still want your biological parent on your FAFSA. And so those are some things where, again, we talked about this before. We know family looks very different, but the government is sometimes a little bit far behind on that. And so for them, FAFSA is asking a very particular set of questions. And again, we do have special circumstances where you can always reach out to the school if you have questions and you want to talk about your different situation.
Yeah, first step should always, once you hit one of these stumbling blocks, is FAFSA tries to help you out a little bit with the answers to your questions with these pop-up boxes and question marks that they have on the application. But when in doubt, just give the financial aid office a call, because we have probably seen every situation a family can be in, at least be able to help guide you through the steps.
Yeah, and Chris, one more thing, we just want to make sure that students understand that you would not list your grandparent. You would not list other relatives that you may be living with if you're not living with your parents, and you would not list a guardian. Those would not be considered parents for FAFSA purposes unless they've adopted you. Mm-hmm. But if you're if you're living with a relative, they are not considered your parents or a sibling or an older sibling.
Yeah, so you may call your aunt mom, but for the FAFSA purposes, they're your aunt and you need to use your biological mother. Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So session 3, which was on October 15th, talked about data retrieval tool, verification, special circumstances, and we talked about the IRS data retrieval tool being the easiest and most expedient way to get your tax information into the FAFSA. It's also a secure way of getting that in. And once you transfer that information in, you shouldn't be panicked that in an effort to protect your privacy, the information is not displayed in the FAFSA. It's also not displayed on your student aid report. You will see transfer from the IRS in those specific fields where the tax data would have appeared if you had entered that by hand.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Chris, you want to talk about verification real quick?
Oh, absolutely. And for the IRS DRT, just know that it lowers the mistakes that you can make by a bunch, which lowers your chances of being selected for verification. And what FAFSA verification is there's spot checking that the federal government's doing to make sure that the FAFSA is being completed correctly, or if they need to change any of the questions or how something reads, they can use this information. Now, the school that you're going to attend is the ones responsible for gathering this information and making these corrections to your FAFSA, but it is the federal government who is selecting you for this review. They select about 30% of FAFSAs completed. And in our statistics, we run right about 29.5% selected. So it's nothing that you're doing wrong or anything that the school or FAFSA is thinking that you're doing wrong. They're just using this because they can see common mistakes or common problems that people make. And in our experience, we find that most of the mistakes are made not to the student's advantage, meaning your parent made $30,000, but you accidentally put the cents in, didn't put the decimal. So now they make $300,000, which the FAFSA is like, great, good for you. You're making $300,000. And here's, this amount of financial aid. When you're like, you know what, my parent only made $30,000. That's a big difference in financial aid package that you'll receive. So a lot of times they'll see these common mistakes and select you from verification, so we can go through and make sure you get all of the financial aid that you're eligible for, because that is the ultimate goal here, is to get what you deserve as far as based on your household size and income that your family has. We want to make sure that you get all the financial aid that you're eligible for. Some of the other things you'll see on here is the why was I selected and what I need to submit and how long does it take. Definitely reach out to the financial aid office to answer these questions. The why I'm selected, I think I answered in that as far as the common mistakes and what do you need to submit will be all documentation that you use to complete the FAFSA. Don't think that we're going to ask for anything that we don't need. We're only going to ask for things that you asked for, that was asked for on the FAFSA. How long does it take? That can vary. A lot of times we say in financial aid, the answer is always, that depends. if you're selected for financial aid, you get things turned in early. Well, guess what? You'll get done really quickly and you'll be in the first batch to be awarded. If you wait until a week before school starts, well, by that time, we're about 2 weeks behind and our fingers are crossed and hopefully you get it done before the payment deadline. So early bird gets the worm with all of these situations.
And then special circumstances. Yeah, Dee Dee, I know you take a lot of questions and a lot of calls from students as you're, our senior counselor. So do you get a lot of questions and a lot of calls about special circumstances? And can you just kind of give our audience a recap of what that entails?
Yeah, we do end up getting a lot of calls about, especially when your situation has changed. And as Chris mentioned before, often those changes are not good changes. So, this year in particular, we know a lot of families are facing financial struggles and that incomes have significantly changed. And a lot of that is really up in the air. So those are the types of situations where, especially when we're using tax year information from a different year, so 2019, we see how that may change in a different year. So those are the type of situations where you're looking at your personal income and you're thinking, well, I should put my 2020. But again, the FAFSA, it's a little bit more of a box and they're asking for this 2019. So we always tell families to answer those questions based on how it's asking at that time. And then contact, for our UNCG students, contact our office. Other students, contact your financial aid office and kind of talk to the counselors there about how your situation has changed. Even a case where if parents filed married and then after filing the FAFSA, parents separate, you want to contact us. In unfortunate cases where a parent passes away, I had a conversation with a student today, you want to contact your office because again, the FAFSA doesn't really allow for you to go in and change that immediately. So you want to contact the school and we can help walk you through that because you already have a lot of things that you're trying to figure out. And adding this one thing on makes it even more difficult. So we definitely are here to help you. So again, contact us early because a lot of times there's back and forth and that is not our attempt to not help you or to try to make the waters even more muddy. It's just that your situation is different and it's unique to you. And we want to make sure that we are getting the information from you specifically about kind of what your situation is and not, again, just saying, well, give us this and we'll look at it and not really focus on how your situation has changed. So contact us early. That gives us plenty of time to work on this and walk you through that process.
Great advice.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Dee Dee, about doing things early in that back and forth, because it can come down to, submitting documents and then we may have a question or maybe the document's incomplete. Mm-hmm. And so again, our attempt is just to make sure we get a complete picture so that we can do justice to your request and make sure that we're covering everything that pertains to your particular situation. So thank you for covering that, because I don't think we stress that enough that, sometimes you send in something and that requires us to ask further questions and to get clarifying documents and clarifying information. So if we're working, say we start asking for information in November and you start turning it in, we've got lots of time to follow up and get that information submitted, ask clarifying questions, rather than waiting until July or August. And as Chris said, we're under the gun then and things are moving really quickly. Classes are starting and there's pressure. And then that's when things get missed or maybe, the stress of the situation just builds up. So yeah, get it done early, get it done.
Yes, sometimes
early.
these things can take a month, right? I mean, and now we have months, but when we get down to the summer, 2 weeks is not long enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in session 4, that's our little, sorry, I forgot about this. This is our graphic on the IRS data retrieval tool. We wanted to put this in again so that you'd have some steps to make sure you're being able to get that information and just know how it works. So this is a graphic, and as Chris said about the other graphic, you can pause the video, make sure you're able to read this and see exactly what the steps are involved in getting that tax information transferred into your FAFSA.
And
So
this information is located online too. So if you ever want to just get a better shot of those, you can Google those. To go back just before we finish, one of the mistakes that I don't want you to make though is doing multiple FAFSA transactions. And what that means is you're going into your FAFSA trying to correct these things on your own, where the school gets one FAFSA with this information, it gets a second FAFSA with this information, third, fourth, 15th. Believe it or not, people will turn in 14 of these things with all different information. Now you're more likely to be selected for verification, and you kind of wasted a lot of your time because we're going to have to make that correction for you. So it's best to, like Dee Dee said, submit what you can submit now as answered as a now, and then contact us about any changes or differences or circumstances, and then we can walk you through those steps and then make one final correction to get the financial aid set up correctly. All right, sorry for the interruption. Session 4.
No, that was good stuff. That was good. Yeah, good information.
Well, I think people are doing this from their heart. Like they're thinking, well, no, I messed up. I need to fix it. I don't think they're playing the system or trying to do anything bad. They're just trying to make it right. And we are the experts in that. So we could do that a lot quicker and simpler for you than you pulling your hair out at home, redoing the FAFSA every time. So.
Yeah. Especially if students are adding like a school to the FAFSA, FAFSA gives you 10 schools that you can add, and you can always, submit that one, go back in and take a school off to add some more. But you may be doing that and thinking, oh, I forgot to add my summer job that I had, and let me change my income. Well, now 5 different schools are going to get new information that the other schools don't have. So that's just generating a new transaction. So we all want to make sure that we have the correct information. So again, if you are finding that you've made a mistake, you've forgotten something, reach out to us because we can help you. Plus, the FAFSA can be a little stressful if you have to go back in and making sure you've done it correctly. So let us help you and not be so stressed out.
And we may need to add that to our top FAFSA errors, going in and making multiple transactions.
I just saw one today that had 14 for this current year, and I'm like, wow, you've done more FAFSAs than you should have done your whole college career.
That's true.
I hope you do less FAFSAs than that in your college career.
That is crazy. So going back to my number one thing is don't do these things late. File your FAFSA early. Well, first of all, file it. Make sure you do a FAFSA, and then make sure you do it early. And you guys just jump in here because these are.
Have you guys gotten any calls of people thinking they've done the FAFSA and they haven't done one?
I don't think she heard you. Did you hear?
No, I'm trying to think.
Yes,
we do get that sometimes because the students will be. So one of the nice things, and we talk about this, and it's kind of like a behind the scene, but we can go in, which is very exciting. We have access to see kind of the FAFSAs that have been processed. And a lot of times students will call and they're like, hey, did you get my FAFSA? And we're like, oh, well, it hasn't come in yet. And we do ours on a weekly basis. That's one of the timelines of kind of when we upload, that's our fancy term for it, but when we kind of pull in those records. So you may have a student who's calling and they're like, it's like 1 week. It's like, well, we should get it next week. Now a week has passed and they're like, we still haven't gotten it. So sometimes I can go into the federal processing system and again, like Chris says, we can see transactions, but all of a sudden it's like, you know what? I do see you completed one, August 1st, but UNCG is not listed on there. And they're like, oh, I forgot to, and I think that's one of our options. I forgot to submit that FAFSA. So we do see that happen. And often it is something where, when we're waiting a week to get your record, because it takes a couple of days for the FAFSA to be processed, and then you'll get your email that says, congratulations, your FAFSA is processed. Well, now we have to wait to pull that. So that can be 1 or 2 weeks. And if it's something simple like, oh, I just forgot to submit that, I saved it but didn't submit it, it really puts you, again, behind. And that's always frustrating when you're trying to be on top of it, but it's something really small like that can throw you off. So yeah, we do see that sometimes.
Yeah, you guys can't see it at home, but Jade put in the chat that she had that exact thing today. A student called in today, thought that they completed the FAFSA. So it does happen. So make sure you submit, make sure you get confirmations, file as early as you possibly can, which I don't see any reason why anyone couldn't file October 1st, as you should have all the information. I don't know about your parents' availability, but a lot of us are at home right now. So,
Or I'll interrupt real quick just to say, especially right now in October, ironically, when you go onto the FAFSA, there are two versions there. One for the current academic,
good
and we
point.
always talk about what year is it, but the current academic year of 2020, 2021, and the upcoming academic year of 2021, 2022. So we'll start seeing students who, October 1, very excited, go in and they file the FAFSA, but they end up doing the 2020, 2021, and that's not the one we need.
So if I was a senior in high school right now, which of those two would I do?
Chris, you should do the 2021, 2022 FAFSA, because that is the year you will be a freshman in college.
Well, Dee Dee, I have a situation. Suppose I'm a student who's going to be starting in spring semester.
Like a transfer student?
Yes, I'm a transfer student.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, for a transfer student, chances are you already have a 2000, and I have to do this so I remember what year it is. You already have a 2020, 2021 FAFSA that you're using with your current school during the fall. That one you want to go back in and update it so that UNCG once again has permission to see your FAFSA information. So you definitely want to go back in, add us, if we're not already on there, to your current FAFSA, which is 2020, 2021 FAFSA. And then while you're there, go ahead and do the FAFSA for next school year. So 2021, 2022. I actually do have this written down because I forget, and I have to have little lines that say 2019 taxes. So
we do too. I have that too.
That's an excellent point. When you said the taxes, we also have to make sure that we remember which tax year goes with which FAFSA.
Right.
Because if you're doing the current 2020, 2021 FAFSA, you will need to use your 2018 taxes. I know somebody's head just exploded. Right? I just saw it.
I'll put this in here. Once you get in the FAFSA, it lets you know exactly what it needs. So when in doubt, just read the title of where you're at.
Right, read the title.
It'll show you. Some of these other errors, really quick. Your parents don't have a social security number. Remember, the FAFSA is based on your citizenship. So your parents cannot have a citizenship status, and you still can complete and sign the FAFSA. The parent not having a social security number, FAFSA recommends you put all zeros as their social security number, and then that'll prompt you to do some signature pages at the end. What is that? Not answering based on the when it is asking.
This
that's our time in our time loop. Yeah,
right, our crazy
time machine, and we start traveling into the past and back to the future, and then back to the it's crazy.
Right, and this is the example where, because it's going to ask for your, so for example, if you are a graduate student, or if you're a student who's coming back and starting college a little bit later in life, you may be married. But you may have just recently gotten married. So it's going to ask, what is your current marital status? So you're like, hey, I get married October 1st. Congratulations. So when you're filling out your FAFSA, you're going to put that I am currently married. But your tax information is going to be a little bit weird, because remember, you have to include everyone in the household, you and your spouse. So now you have to use your information and your spouse's information from 2019 when you probably filed as single. So that's one of those places where it can be really confusing, because sometimes people will say, well, I filed as single, so let me answer single. Or I'm married now, but my taxes are single, so I'm getting an error with the data retrieval. Which one do I do? So that's one of those parts where we were like, kind of focus on the when. Again, if you have if you're 18, maybe you are which we see this sometimes, like maybe you are you have a sibling you have a twin who's also going to be going into college. So you want to include who's going to be in college next year. So both of you would be the number in college. So it's one of those weird things where it's like, you kind of have to do a little bit of projecting into the future, looking back to the past, and that can throw you off. So it's important, like Chris says, it's going to have it on there. It's like, as of this date, what is your status? And so you want to answer it based on this, and then use the information from a different time. So that's one of those points where, like, just make sure you're focused on the when that they're asking for.
Yeah. Don't think too much about it. Answer it as it's being
Right.
asked. And,
Yeah.
and if you answer things wrong, it tries to give you errors and pop-ups about it. And if you want to go back and review anything that you've answered on the FAFSA, once you submit it, you're going to get a student aid report. And that's a term that we use, SAR, quite a bit. But student aid report is basically a printout of the FAFSA you just completed. It also includes any problems or any things that need to be verified or things that were wrong, and some contact information as well. So definitely hang on to that. The school doesn't need to receive this student aid report. We get that digitally. That's the FAFSAs that we bring in, which is pretty much a copy of that too. So once you get admitted into the school, we can now ask you for these additional requirements if you have them. Not everybody has them, but that SAR report will tell you what you'll need to do next.
Yep. All right, guys. Any more discussion on week 4?
Well, I think the
FAFSA errors.
next slide, Deborah, is the next slide an example of the student aid report?
Oh, look at that. There's a student aid report.
Who made these slides?
Oh my gosh. So
Wow.
this is an example of what Chris was just talking about, where you do get your student aid report. So you can check your aid year, make sure it's the correct aid year on there.
And that's for the new upcoming seniors in high school coming to
Mhm.
up and coming freshmen.
You can check, I think it also has like your school, the schools that you've put on there. It'll have your EFC, that estimated family contribution, which, remember, is not necessarily what the family is expected to pay, but it's an important number because we use it to determine what type of aid you qualify for with federal Pell, state money, sometimes institutional money. So it's still important to know that number, but also it can be a trigger to say, hey, I think something may be wrong. Because, for example, on the one we have, this EFC is 0. But if you get one and all of those numbers are 9s, that means you've got like a $1 million EFC. So, and maybe you do, which is great. Still
Maybe
follow
you do.
FAFSA, always important. But if you're thinking, don't remember making 7 or 8, figure income, you might have a mistake somewhere on your FAFSA that you can then check your student aid report and kind of find. So it's great to be able to kind of glance over that, make sure your information is correct, make sure your name is correct, make sure all of the things are where they should be.
And you can see there in the box with the yellow highlight around it, it says your FAFSA has been selected for verification. And then it explains the verification there. So once you submit the FAFSA, you will know automatically whether you have to submit some additional documentation or not. And remember, this documentation doesn't go back to FAFSA. It actually goes to the school that you plan on attending. So once you make that determination and get admitted into that school, the financial aid office at that school will start asking for this information. But you were told first. So.
And make copies of things that you have. So if you are selected for verification, one of the requirements, if you haven't and you weren't able to do the data retrieval, it's going to ask for a tax return transcript, which is free. You can order it from the IRS, especially if you're having to send it to multiple schools. Or, parents, if you have multiple children who need it, make sure you make a copy of that. Don't send us your originals. Don't send the school your originals. Make copies so that way you can keep track of it. And I would say also make sure you are submitting that directly. Sometimes, we've got what's called our, oh my goodness, our document uploader. Thank you. I was like, our document uploader, where you can scan and upload things securely. We don't have a fax that you have to worry, like, did the fax go through? Was it the right side up? It's not an email where you can accidentally email it to the wrong person, and you definitely don't want to do that with your social security number on it. So you can use the document I don't know why I keep mistaking that for FAFSA, but the document uploader is R. So you can upload your documents securely. And then that way, hey, I submitted that, it went through, I have a PDF copy on my desktop. And that's great. It's just a great way of making sure that you've submitted your documents, you haven't put it in the mail, you haven't faxed it, hoping it gets there. So definitely, stay in control of the items that you're submitting to us.
Good point, Dee Dee. Excellent
Great advice.
point. Yeah, that's good advice. And I want to add one other thing about the verification process. When you get an email or a notice from the schools asking for that information, go ahead and send it in, whether you've been admitted or not. And the reason I encourage you to do that is because you can have that process all completed And then once you've gotten your admissions information, then the financial aid office can go ahead and get your award done. And we're going to talk about that because that's part of the next step. So we'll talk about that a little bit later. I just want to make sure, don't wait and say, well, I don't know, I'm going to wait and see what the admission status is. Go ahead and finish your FAFSA data, finish all of the financial aid stuff up front. Just do it all. And then make sure you can follow through once you've been admitted, and you'll get you an award letter. Then you'll have more information to base your decision on, and you're not running, around at the last minute trying to get documents. So our next steps, that leads us nice little segue into our next steps. You file the FAFSA, and we've gone through all of those kinds, all of those situations, or not all of them, but highlighted some of them. Be sure that you submitted signature pages if you need to, because as Chris pointed out, when you are doing the FAFSA, if your parents do not have a social security number, they're not going to be able to get an FSA ID and sign it electronically. You will need to print out the signature pages and send them to the address that is on the signature page. Don't send it to us. No, don't send it to us. Send it directly to the address that's printed.
We have to keep them until the end of time.
Yes, that's true. Yes. How many do you have in your drawer now, Chris? No, just teasing. But yeah, don't send those.
The same ones you got way back when. So.
Oh, wow. You still have those?
I have to keep them forever.
Yeah.
So.
And then, again, the verification process, make sure you've completed that. There may be a ton of other things that you need to turn in. Chris, Dee Dee, you guys just jump in as
sure. And the most important thing is that FAFSA is just step one. It's not a one and done type of thing. There's a lot of other steps you got to get to before your first day of class.
Right. And especially with completing verification, yes, pay attention to your student aid report if you are selected for verification, because what will happen, and we'll go into a little bit too about the timeline. For some people who did the FAFSA on October 1, right now you're kind of waiting. Good job doing it that first day. You got it out of the way, you're on the right track. But schools are, we just started our 2021 school year, so we're still navigating that. And then we'll kind of transition and switch over to start working with the 21-22 school year. So you've been selected for verification. It's a great time to make sure you're like, okay, well, do we have our tax forms? If we need to file taxes, maybe we did an extension, we have time to go ahead and get that taken care of. At least for UNCG, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, probably in December, we'll start reaching out to students. We'll make our forms available. We have a portal called UNC Genie. Current students are familiar with this. Incoming students, you'll be sent instructions.
You will get familiar with this. Yeah.
Right, you'll get very familiar with it. So it's a little Genie lamp icon as you're looking for it on our webpage. But we'll start making those forms available to you, because every school, while they will complete verification, it will look a little differently. Some schools may outsource that. Some schools may have one form that looks a little bit differently. So we will make those available to you when we start sending you those emails and those notifications about verification and how to complete your next steps.
And I would say too, don't send us anything unless we ask for it.
Great advice. Yeah.
Yeah. So even if your FAFSA says you're selected for verification, wait until you get the notification from us, because when we send you the notification, we're also going to send you information on how to access those forms and exactly what it is that you need to send us. So you may have done the data retrieval tool. So that means you may not need to send us a tax return. So, that can be one less thing that you'll have to gather. So be careful about that. Just bide your time. And as Dee Dee pointed out, we've got the timeline that, you may have filed your FAFSA on October 1st, but we won't start processing and pulling those records in. And Chris, actually, I should let you answer this, because that's what you do. That's you. That's what you're
right. But behind the scenes, we have to set all these things up. We have to get the new systems in. We have to update the forms, and all of this comes together. And then we have to do testing to make sure it all works. So we are in the middle of all of that right now, getting ready for 2021, and should be able to have all that available really soon. I'm not the one that picks that date though. So, but we're ready to go. I'll tell you that.
And so again, we want to draw your attention back to the special circumstances session that we held on October 15th, where we really did go into a lot of good detail about what the special circumstances are, the process that you would go through in order to make that information known to us. So we definitely encourage you to go back and look at that session. In any case, as Dee Dee said earlier, contact the financial aid office if you have any change in your circumstances, anything that's different from what you placed on the FAFSA. So anything that's changed since you filed your FAFSA is what you would want to make known to us. And then we'll let you know what documentation would be sufficient to address that particular issue. So anything else on this slide that you wanted to cover? Anything, any other comments or anything you want to add?
As far as next steps, I know our school communicates with you through email. That seems to be the best that we have right now. I know we've tested out with some text messages and things like that. But that being said, is whatever email you give the university, that's what we're going to start emailing. Now, you're going to get a lot of emails from a lot of different places, different schools, different offices, different departments on campus. But just know those from the financial aid office and the cashier's office are really, really important. If you don't feel like maybe you can handle or sort those emails out, definitely call a parent in to come and help and sort those things out. And if you get an email, we really take time to put the information in an email. So please read it. I know these sound like simple advice, but this is what we deal with on a daily basis in a financial aid office, is we spend the time to send this information out to you. So hopefully that you will read it and now be more educated on what your next steps are going to be. So definitely, I would, until your bill is completely paid and you're in your classes and going through the semester, I would check this daily, if not weekly. And anything from the cashier's office or the financial aid office, I would prioritize to reviewing out. As far as admissions as well, once they go through, but they have a different portal that they use.
Right.
Read your
That's
emails,
good.
please.
And also, speaking of email, once you've submitted your record, once you've gotten a record, not that kind of a record, a file at UNCG, then you have access. You can activate your UNCG email account, and that is the main account that we'll be communicating with you through. Once you're a Spartan, so that is the main email account that you want to make sure that you're checking, that you're following through on. And as Chris said, those email messages from the financial aid office and from the cashier's office are super important. You don't want to miss any of those, because we are telling you how much money you're going to be able to get. And the cashier's office is telling you how much money you need to pay them. So paying the bill is important. You want to make sure you're on top of that.
You don't send out useless emails.
Yeah, no. We don't have time. Nope, everything is important. Everything's important. So in keeping with our next step and our timeline, we wanted to talk about the award timeline, because, again, you've completed the FAFSA, especially for your new students who are going to be coming next fall. You're completing the FAFSAs now. You're, in October and November and December. And we just want to make sure that you have some idea of how this whole awarding timeline works, when you can expect to find out what your financial aid offer is. So we wanted to just kind of work with this a little bit and take some time. So guys, let's really dive in and give them as much detail as possible. For the springtime award notices, this is for, we'll start awarding and notifying students for next fall. So these are students who are going to be entering in UNCG for the fall 2021 semester. Oh my God, I can't believe it's 2021. We will start those award notifications typically. And we have, there's so many pieces of this puzzle that have to come together. But typically it's the end of February, early March, sometimes mid-March, again, depending on the status of the state budget, the status of some of the scholarship funding and institutional funding.
And we just got hit by a pandemic, so that threw everything for a loop too. So we're all adapting to this as well.
Exactly. So that's a good point, Chris. That may really cause some shifting in some other timelines. So we're asking your patience. We will notify you that there's definitely to let you know exactly how much you're being offered. We'll give you instructions on, how to view it and, what it means, and then encourage you to, to give us a call so that we can, help you make sure you understand what your award includes. So then that brings us to the scholarship, because this is important, especially for prospective students. And I do want us to spend a little bit of time on this as well. So Dee Dee, jump in here with me. So as students are applying for merit scholarships, these are the incoming freshmen who are applying for merit scholarships under the Blue and Gold scholarships, you must have your admissions application completed and submitted. That includes the application fee by December 1st to be considered for these scholarships. Now you may, and I'm not sure how, and I don't want to speak for the admissions office, but they will be the notifying agent for these scholarships. So they will notify you of whether or not you're getting a Blue and Gold scholarship, and then they'll notify us, and it will appear in your award when we send that out in February. So you may get a notice on a Blue and Gold scholarship before you get a full financial aid award. So don't panic if you're like, is this all I'm getting?
Is this all I'm getting? Yeah.
Get anything? That's going to be incorporated into your full financial aid award. Again, that will be in the early spring semester, usually early March, late February. So did I miss anything? Make sure I didn't miss any details on that.
Do you have to have a FAFSA filed for the Blue and Gold scholarship?
Ooh, good question.
Not for the Blue and Gold scholarship. So, and this is one of those things where, we're putting this out here for whoever wants to join us in these evening sessions, but and again, contact us. Last week, I definitely, spent some time and helped a young man who was completing his FAFSA, and he kept talking about wanting to go to app. And I'm like, okay. I told him, please consider UNCG. I am not offended, but I still will help you. And so, we still want to be able to help you. I think UNCG was maybe the third choice. Hopefully, my assistants bumped us up a little bit, but, reach out to our offices. But unfortunately, for prospective students and our current students, you have two different pathways for really navigating your financial aid. Like Deborah said, for prospective students, if you're looking for those merit-based scholarships, you're going to be going through the admissions side. They will handle that. Again, the deadline is December 1st. I'm sure you will find a lot of information on your Spartan link about that process, what it looks like, what it entails. And again, especially as you are a new student, maybe you're the oldest in the family, the first one kind of navigating this, you'll have different award offers from the various schools. So make sure you're holding on to those and you're comparing them. But scholarships are really going to come through admissions. They'll notify our office, and that way when we send out your award letter, it will have that information already on there. For our current students, the scholarship portal is the Spartan Scholarship System. That's going to open up on January 15th. Now, our current students will contact us if they have questions about navigating that and about scholarships. But again, prospective students, scholarships, you really want to talk to admissions and get their input, understand what their process will look like. Our current students, you'll be working through the Spartan Scholarship System. Now, eventually, all of those will come together and show up on your financial aid award package that even, current students, you get that notice through your UNC Genie portal. Incoming students, you might get an award letter. Again, we're still navigating some of those ideas, but if you get something in the mail, again, you'll also get it through UNC Genie. So that's the most up-to-date, accurate. You'll see all your changes happen, electronically. So UNC Genie is the portal where you'll still be able to see your award. I think that's really one of those main things of noting that, and of kind of what you're going to see and where.
Yeah, that's good. I'm glad you made that distinction, because it is really important that prospective or new income, you're no longer a prospective student, you're incoming Spartans, will navigate your scholarship, the merit scholarship program, through the admissions office, and they will contact you and give you instructions and information on what that entails, and as far as notification and acceptance.
So it
And then
sounds to
more-
me like if you haven't bought an agenda or a planner, you need to go out and buy an agenda and a planner, right?
Yeah.
'Cause there
That
is a
sounds
lot of
good.
different deadlines. There's a lot of different moving pieces to this. But welcome to college. This is how it works. Unfortunately, it's not a one-stop shop, right? I mean, we try to make it as streamlined as possible, but there's a lot of different offices in play and different rules and regulations.
Mhm.
Our job as the financial aid office is to set all that up together and then offer you a financial aid award. And then it's back in your hands, right, guys? I mean, once we offer it, we don't accept it for you. You have to take this next step to go in to your UNC Genie account and accept the amounts that you want to take. You can take all of it, you can take some of it, you can take none of it.
Mhm.
That's your choice. And that would be a discussion that you and your family would need to have to decide how much financial aid is going to be what's best for you. We would all suggest don't take any that you don't need,
Mhm.
especially in loans. There's no sense in taking more money in a loan than you need. Take as much as you need. You can always come in later. And if you need additional and have additional eligibility, you can come in later and accept that. No, there's plenty of options for paying. The cashier's office has a payment plan. The financial aid can help pay. It's very rarely that the financial aid pays everything. That's a myth that we run into quite a bit when we talk to families out in the community, is that financial aid pays for everything in the semester, and it does its best, but it does fall short once you start registering for additional things like housing and meal plans and books and supplies and things like that. So there is another step at the end once we set all this up of you accepting this financial aid to pay your bill at the cashier's office. Remember, our office only offers the financial aid. The cashier's office is who controls the bill.
Mhm. And one of the things I want to remind students, and or maybe just let you know, we're sometimes, I always talk about, sometimes navigating financial aid can feel like you're learning a second language. Because in this process, we've been referring to financial aid. We talk about financial aid. You may be hearing that as grants and scholarships, things that don't have to pay back. For us, it's all encompassing. It includes grants and scholarships that you don't have to repay, but it also includes federal loans. And that can be loans for parents, it can be loans for students, but it also includes loans. So it's important to note that when you are offered your financial aid package and when you're looking at that, to really pay attention to what's on there. We're very upfront. A loan is clearly listed as a loan, but it's part of your financial aid package. So if you're thinking, wow, I've been offered $17,000 in aid, I'm going to accept all of it, and you're not paying close enough attention, you may accept loans that you don't want to accept. If you're thinking, hey, I want to avoid taking out loans, because again, this is the aid that we've offered to you. You know, this is what you qualify for. We're not making a judgment call on saying, you know, you don't need a loan if you're going to live at home, if you're going to live off campus. That's money that you can still use to help you with your expenses, like books, supplies, even, you know, living expenses. That's money that, you know, is available to you because, you know, the government and schools, they want to make sure that you can, as best you can, focus on studies and not have to work maybe one or two jobs to try to fill in that gap. So that is money that's available to you. But like Chris said, if you don't want to accept all of it, if you only want to accept a partial amount, you can, but really pay attention to what you're accepting, because sometimes, again, you go quick and you're like, I'm just going to accept, and we're used to this, like terms and conditions. All right, iTunes, I'm going to just accept it. I need a music. So we're used to just really clicking through and accepting everything, but make sure you're really paying attention to that. If you have questions, give us a call. Again, we have links where it says this is what a loan is, this is what a grant is. But if you have questions and want to follow up with us, you know, definitely reach out, because I don't want you to be at a point where all of a sudden October you're like, wait a minute, I just got a notice that says I have a loan. I didn't mean to take out a loan. Well,
Yeah.
October's a little bit different. So, you know, kind of just, you know, be mindful of that, I guess is the best way of saying it. And again, we're very upfront. We're no hidden special names for things. If it's a loan, it'll have federal direct, subsidized or unsubsidized loan, and will be very clearly marked.
So for all the parents out there that think that this is like buying a car where you can get a different price and change the price and argue this up and down, no, it's set. It is what it is. Dee Dee's right. There's no hidden. We try to be as upfront as possible, and we're going to award you as much upfront as possible. We don't have money hidden anywhere. We have no business on hanging on to any money that is eligible to you. We're going to give it to you all up front.
Right. We want to make sure we're helping our students. You don't need to know a secret handshake or have to have a connection. You know, we're not trying to navigate that way. We want to make sure that, hey, we're helping our students who need this assistance. We're not trying to withhold money from you. We get really excited when I have a conversation with a student and they're like, and you can, you know, even with like mom or dad, and I see their eyes light up and like, we can afford this. This is going to be a possibility for us. Like, that's good. We want to have more conversations like that. We want to help you guys navigate this. So like Chris said, we're not trying to hide money to the side. Just so if you know, we come in with a secret bucket. No, we're giving it out front, what you qualify for, what you're eligible to receive. We're putting it out there.
Which brings me back to my other point, file early.
Yes.
So that we can have that grin.
Oh, good point. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, so, you know, because here, you know, if you are eligible and your file is one of the within that priority filing window, you are probably going to get the full amount of the eligible funds that you qualify for. Whereas, you know, your eligibility may not change, but the availability of the funding may change the later you are in the process. So we just encourage you, get it done as quickly as possible. And I can hear somebody in the background saying, but what if everybody files early? We award it until there is no.
You let us deal with that. Yeah. Unfortunately, that has not been the case. And, you know, all the years that I've been in financial aid, there's more procrastinators than there are people who want to get things done early. But you know, Deborah, we've talked about this, you know, in our meetings and stuff too. This year was the absolute worst year of procrastinating on anything to do with education. Government entities shut down, schools shut down, offices had to go remote. So things that would have normally taken a week took months, and the early birds survived. I'm sure there was a lot of students who didn't make it that last month that easily could have made it if they did it a month before, 2 months before, 3 months before. So.
Yeah, you're right, Chris. One of the things that one of the areas that I'm responsible for is making sure that our continuing students are aware of the FAFSA filing being open, encouraging them, hint, hint, that means nagging emails.
She knows your name, by the way. She knows your name.
I do. I know all of your names. Yes, I do. And I will come for you. But yeah, that is one of the things that I'm responsible for is reaching out to our students and encouraging them to get their applications done. And one of the most disappointing things that you know, I saw happening, there were students who actually had, well, in some cases, you know, they filed their FAFSAs, but I was also helping with some other mailings with students who had filed but had not followed through and completed the process, namely the verification process. And what I wanted to touch on was, you know, once you get your award notice, there still may be other documents that you need to complete. It is possible that you are selected for verification, but you get an award that's contingent on you completing the verification process. So here's the thing, you have an award. We're still asking for verification documents. You don't turn in the verification documents, you don't get an award. So you have to turn in those verification documents. And one of the, I was looking at some of the files, and there were students who had been notified last November of 2029, that we needed additional information. And they'd not followed through. And we're looking at August. Classes started on August 18th. And at that point, then it's like, you know, it's like that crunch to try to get information in. And I mean, it really hurts us to see students and see families struggling at that point in the timeline to get things done. Yeah. So please.
Yeah, because our office is open from 8 to 5 all through the summer, all through the fall, winter. I mean, we only take home. No.
Well, I mean, and now
we work from home, but
work goes home with us. I mean, you know, so now since the shutdown, yeah, we were all working remote. So we had all of our stuff right there with us. So we were able to still work through that.
And counselors are available, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4 to answer your questions. We are here. And you definitely don't want another entity, not to throw anyone under the bus, but the IRS, a lot of those offices were closed. They weren't mailing out things. So even if students were trying to get things done, another office or another, government process was closed and was preventing them. So
that's out of all of our controls at that point.
And that just stinks, because I had so many conversations like, I understand what you're going through, but we haven't got any different rules and we still need to be able to finish this up. So definitely start the process early. And again, as you're calling in for our students, please be patient with us. Sometimes, which again, we really want these to spread this out. Yes, when you're calling in August, it may feel like it's a 5-10 minute wait because a lot of other people are calling. But sometimes right now there could be we get 20 minutes before in between calls. So we are available for our current students. I think it's on the next slide or one of the slides. You can make appointments. We have 15-minute appointments available where you can come into the office. We are still, being very mindful of like social distancing and not having too many people congregate. So we have options where you can come in for a session. You can do a Zoom appointment, which especially is really great because you can share that link with your parents. So I had a great conversation this morning with a mom because her son signed up for the Zoom appointment, sent her the link. I've had conversations where students sent the link to mom was in one location, she was in another one, dad was somewhere else. So, it's a great way to gather, as we can all see, we're all in different locations and still be able to connect to us. So we're trying to make our counselors as available to students as we can. Again, navigating this kind of new normal, but yeah, definitely just reach out to us. Yes, it's here on the screen, starfish.uncg.edu for our current students. Sign up, lots of variety for you to choose one. Other students, our phone number, it's on probably the next slide.
At the top.
Oh, that's where my people are. So yeah, phone number's at the top. Give us a call.
Dee Dee, those are really good points. And one of the things that you made that came to mind as you were talking, as we were talking about timelines and when to contact the financial aid office. How do I say this? For new students, for incoming students, for prospective students who are coming in the fall semester, now is a great time.
Perfect time.
This is a great time to call and get information and ask your questions. January, not so good. Okay.
Yeah, good point.
January is probably not a good time because we're coming back into the spring semester. The opening of the spring semester is, pretty hectic. And then we have, a lot of new students who are entering in the spring semester. Now, if you're entering in spring semester, you call us now too, so that we can make sure we get your stuff done. But yeah, usually the opening of the semester, those first 2 or 3 weeks of classes are super busy, especially on the phones. So we don't want you to be frustrated by that. If you're coming in the fall, you still have time. So it's okay if you wait until February or March to make a call, to come by. You still have time. What we want you to do is make sure you file your FAFSA now, so that you have all of that done out of the way, so that your questions are basically follow-up questions, clarifying questions, that you're not caught in the middle of trying to retrieve an important document. So we want to make sure that we can help you through all of that whole process. And I think this is actually my last slide. Oh, yeah. And then if you have questions, there's Minnie. Hi, Minnie.
As you say, the hardest working person in our office right there.
Is Minnie in Florida watching? Hi, Minnie. Hopefully. But this is another opportunity to get questions answered, especially some of those general questions. Maybe you don't want to spend time on the phone. You just want to know, well, what is financial aid? Or, how do I submit,
Or you're up at 3 a.m. in the morning. And
yeah. So
what's my bill due?
Yeah, she'll answer that. So I'm going to actually stop my screen share at this point. I did have a couple more slides, but I just want us to all three be on the screen for the as we come into our ending. We really enjoyed doing this session for you guys, and have really wanted to give you as much information as we could about the FAFSA process as it works at you, and just some things as it works at UNCG. We were not able to do our in-person FAFSA workshops. We typically do those every fall, and then we start them again in the spring. So this was our attempt to make sure we could still get some information out to you. So if you have questions, it is still not too late. You can always send us your questions. Our Google form is still open if you want to send that in, but I'm going to put an email link in there so that you can either email us your questions. That may be the easiest and most expedient way to get to do that now. Email us your questions so that we can make sure that we have given you everything you need. Go back and watch these videos.
Share these videos with your family, whoever's helping
exactly.
you go to college. That may be a friend or a family member. Share this video because there's a lot of great information.
Yeah, and check our social media platforms for updates and information on new videos and new sessions that we'll be doing. I'm planning something for next Thursday. Haven't decided if it's going to be exactly. It's going to be about money for sure. As we were talking, I thought a couple of ideas popped into my head that people might need to know and might need some explanation on as you're trying to figure out, well, how much will I need to pay for college? What is the cost? So we may extend this FAFSA, this Money Matters FAFSA 101 series into maybe talking about cost of attendance and those issues as we go forward. So yeah, I'll just see what my
Hey, Deborah, you've done an awesome job with all of these. It has been a pleasure. It is great information. I know that other people in the community have really reached out and are using these to help educate their people as well.
Well, that's great.
So awesome job. I'd like to thank Deborah, Lauren, who's not in here tonight, Dee Dee, Jade behind the scenes has been, irreplaceable for us. So it does
don't
take
forget Keisha, our cheerleader.
It takes a village to run all of this, and just know that the information isn't ours to hold. We just want to share it with everybody we can and give you the best advice, because that makes your job easier and it makes our job easier. The more educated that you can be, because knowledge is power. So
yep. Dee
Dee, any last? You were the guru of wisdom down there.
I know. File your FAFSA.
That's it. Thank you guys. Thanks for hanging out with us over this month.
Be sure to watch these, share. Glad that you could join us. All right. And we're going to see you later.
Have a good night. Bye.